that about? We know what that's about. Stimulation feels stimulatory. It feels great. It feels wonderful. We pay to be stressed in the right way. We pay to see a good, scary movie. We pay for a really great roller coaster. And what we see in those cases is a transient, moderate rise in glucocorticoid levels. Feels wonderful, addictively so in some cases, and this is the reason for it. It increases dopamine release. And this is such a clear mechanism that a laboratory rat will actually work at pressing a lever over and over and over to get infused with just the right amount of glucocorticoids that maximizes dopamine release. So short-term stress feels wonderful by way of dopamine release. Now the key thing here is short-term moderate stress. Massive stress, no matter how short-term it is, having your limbs twisted painfully, are not going to lead to wondrous dopamine release and feeling wonderful and alive and all of that. Likewise, no matter how moderate of a stressor, if it's really chronic, that's not going to feel great either. It's not by chance that roller coaster rides are not 3 weeks long. The transients, once you have glucocorticoids, now